Please join me on stage, ma'am. Please join me on stage. Thank you so much for joining us. I was telling you earlier that, when I finished reading your book, 2 days later, as I'm driving out of the office, I was literally still processing the book itself. It was such an emotional ride. You allow the reader you invite the reader into your life, from when you were a child up until now. Your book is called Real Life Q, and apologies, I have it as a soft copy, so I don't have the hard copy, but it's a recent publication, a 2024 publication. Let me switch it on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Yes, it was published at the beginning of this month, actually.
Wow.
Which is insane. I feel so honored to have been invited to speak on this panel, especially with such respected, highly qualified, experienced panelists. And my book being very new, I thought that there's no way that I would be able to be called to such an event. But I think that when God says there's a message to be delivered, then you just have to show up and deliver.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You were very transparent in your book.
Very.
Very descriptive as well. You were raised in an orphanage, never met your parents. In fact, the only link to your parents was your older sister, who was in the same orphanage as you were, and she was about 3 or 4 years older than you.
That's correct.
I came across a recent Instagram post of yours, and you used this caption that stuck with me. You said, and it was a video, but you put the words, "the most resilient orphan you have ever met." And ladies and gents, once you read the book, you will understand why. Because I read the book and then I saw this caption, and those words made so much sense. I was also quite fascinated about how at such a young age you were able to recall so many memories to the T. I really love that because it just adds a lot of description to the story. But I don't want to give too much away. People still need to buy the book and we still need to have this conversation. Please take us through your life as an orphan from the early days up until you were a teen.
Okay, so as you already know, I grew up in an orphanage. The orphanage that I speak a lot about in the book is actually the second orphanage that I stayed in. The first one was in what I believe is my hometown. I know very little about my background. I know very little about how my parents passed on. The only information that I have is from my older sister, who was 4 at the time, and then from social workers. And so I arrived at that orphanage when I was 3 years old. And growing up in an orphanage is challenging in the sense that even though your daily needs are taken care of, like we are fed, we are clothed, we are sent to schools, there's a huge part of it that is missing, and it's that love that you can get only from a parent. And even though we had great house mothers, they can only give so much of themselves when there's 30 to 50 kids that they need to be attending to on a daily basis. So when you enter an orphanage at a very young age, you have to grow up very quickly. There's a lot of life challenges and milestones that I had to overcome on my own or work through on my own because the house mothers were tending to kids that are a bit younger than me. I remember the first time that I realized that no one's coming to save me. I need to if I want to go somewhere in life, I need to get up and do it myself, was when I was forgotten at school.
Sure.
Which is understandable because there's just so many of us. And I was standing and I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was getting dark even. And the security guards at the school had even now said, I need to wait outside the school.
Wow.
Because they need to lock up and they need to go home. And I think I only got picked up around 8 or 9 o'clock.
Sure.
When someone finally realized, oh, one of the orphans is missing. And that to me, it happened when I was 8 or 10 years old, and it was a real eye opener, or in a way, like a moment when you realize that you're on your own. You need to fend for yourself. And if you want to make something great out of yourself, you're going to have to work hard and focus and put in even more effort than the average person would. And I did exactly that. And that's why I'm here today. And I just love to share my story to inspire other people, even if you're not an orphan.
Yeah.
But just to have so much faith in yourself. And that's where it begins.
Yeah. Sure. You know, you say in the book that a lot of us who have an idea of orphanages don't really understand how orphanages actually are in reality.
Yeah.
And there's a chapter in the book called Who Am I? And I'm going to quote you briefly because this stood out. A lot of things stood out, but this is one of them. You say, I've always panicked when asked to describe or introduce myself. I am Zulu biologically, so yes, I have a Zulu complexion, Zulu hair, and certainly a Zulu girl's body, but nothing else about me is Zulu. Let's talk about the struggle to reconcile who you were biologically and who you were as a result of you growing up in an orphanage.
All right, so a lot of the caretakers at the orphanage were white or Indian or colored. And then there were even some Zulu house mothers and caretakers. However, because there were children coming from all sorts of backgrounds, we had to all speak English to accommodate all the kids and the house mothers. They even changed my name. My name is Qinisile, but because a lot of people struggle to pronounce it, I was called Queenie. From, and I think I spoke about it in the book as well, from the age of when I arrived at 3 until I went to varsity. I only recently actually started to claim back my name, Qinisile. And even that name, Qinisile, I didn't like to respond to it because it made me feel Zulu when I was not Zulu. I wasn't Zulu in the sense that I didn't know my culture. There wasn't anyone to pass on my Zulu culture to me. I didn't know my mother tongue. Even now, I don't speak Zulu. And a lot of us in the orphanage were mocked for, at school we were mocked, and we were mocked with the other kids at the orphanages who came from orphanages that were a bit more predominantly Zulu. So I always had this internal battle with my culture, who I was, and the biggest part of me not identifying as Zulu came from the fact that all the people who were coming to rescue us as orphans, to come and adopt, to come and foster, were white people. And when you see that as a child, you start to put white people on a pedestal, and you look at your own people, and the only thing that I'm seeing or receiving from my own people is mocking, and why don't you know your culture? You don't know who you are. But the white people are coming, and they are the ones teaching us and schooling us and clothing us and adopting us and saving us.
Wow. And I mean, let's clap for that. I mean, if you don't have the background, I personally I haven't met an orphan. And even if I do, their story doesn't go all the way back to when you say you pretty much have never met your parents, right? No one came to claim you from the malumes, the aunties. No one could recall that, oh, there is a child out there that is ours.
Yes, and that's another part. When we speak about me and my relationship towards my culture, I will admit that I have disowned it. And all of these aspects that I've already spoken to are part of the reason. I think the book was a big journal. That's what it is. It's a journal of my realist thoughts, and it's things that I'm working through therapy now, thank God. But one of the other reasons why I even got to that place of rejecting my culture was knowing that surely there was an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother or cousin who, when my parents passed on, could have come to rescue us, and they didn't.
Wow. And thank you for saying that, it's your realist thoughts. I really felt that as I said, the thoughts were very transparent, and you say that you are working through all of that, and big ups to you for actually getting onto the healing journey, not just saying this is my story, but actually working through it.
Yes.
So the chapter that really, 3 days later after reading it, got me messed up, right, is the chapter you call Trust. You talk about how you found out about your health status at some point when you were older, which is very different to what you were told at 13 years old as an orphan. Tell us about this 13-year-old conversation that happened and certain information was given, and then now when you're older and you discover the real truth.
All right, so when I was 13, I was at school, and an announcement came on the intercom to let me know that I need to go back home straight after school instead of doing sports that I usually enjoyed. So when you get that announcement, we already know something's off because they don't usually call us home with that sort of urgency. So when I got home, the social worker and the matron were waiting at the front gate and told me to go to the office. Now, this is when I really started to panic because I knew the office, nothing good ever happened at the office. So I went to the office, and when they finally started to talk to me, they revealed to me that I was born HIV positive. And I had contracted it from my mother. My sister is positive as well. And all the years leading up to that point, I had been going to the hospital every 6 months to draw bloods. Now, I was too young to understand what that was for. And at 13, they said, now I'm old enough to understand. So they gave me the whole breakdown and explained that I do not need to start on ARVs yet because my CD4 count is still high, but I do need to go every 6 months to draw bloods and check if I'm still okay, or if I now need to go onto meds.
Yeah.
At 13, hearing that you're HIV positive feels like a death sentence. It really does. That's why even when adults are tested positive, there's intense counseling that they would need to go through because it's a hard thing to learn, and a lot of people do take it as a death sentence, which I now know is not. But at 13, it felt like I was hit by a train or bus. And when I tried to console or find someone to console in, I spoke to my closest friend who had been my friend.
Jessica, I think.
Jess, yes. I spoke to her, who had been my friend since grade 1, because I thought that she would be the one to understand and still accept me. And unfortunately, she didn't. At 13, there is this pressure to be cool and be part of an it group. And I guess someone who has HIV didn't fit that image. And so my long childhood friend decided to reject me because of my HIV status. And I went through a very fast downward spiral. Like you've already probably picked up, I really enjoyed sports and I really loved extracurricular activities. I really extended myself. I love showing up, I love leading, I love being involved in things, but I really retreated into myself when that happened because of the rejection that I felt from Jess and the rejection that I assumed I would receive from everybody else. So I stopped getting involved in activities. My marks dropped. I started hanging out with the wrong crews. I became very, very suicidal. I would sit in the bathroom at the orphanage at night and I would mix cleaning products in a cup and I would look, I felt like I was staring death in the face because I knew if I drink this, it will speed up the process. I'm gonna die anyway. I'm not gonna reach 27. I'm not gonna find a husband. I'm not going to achieve my goals. So what's the point of dreaming? And I was so alone. I was so alone in my high school period. At some point, God came to fetch me himself. I describe it like that because it can only be that. I somehow landed up in one of the church like groups at school, and they were preaching and I was hearing nothing, because at this point I was so angry at God. I heard nothing. However, when they started to sing, they had worship and they sang, "It is well with my soul," I felt something so moving, because I felt like I'm singing these words, it is well with my soul, when it's not. It wasn't. And my eyes were closed and I was in tears, and I swear to God, I felt something, someone hug me. And it was the warmest feeling, and it radiated from within, and I've never experienced it before, and I even struggled to explain it, but I know it was so real. And I felt it was God saying, it is fine. And from that moment, I didn't understand what his plan was.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why I was an orphan, why my family didn't come and fetch me, why I was born with HIV. But God said it is well, so it is well.
Yeah.
From there, my life changed. Firstly, thank you. Firstly, I accepted Christ into my life from that day. Like I said before, I was involved in very dangerous things. I was a cutter. I was very depressed. My friends were also very suicidal as well. So we all had like a lot of, we call them tiger stripes. And from that day, I decided to put all of that aside and focus on whatever plan God had. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long I was still going to have to live. But if it was just 4 years left, then it's going to be the best 4 years that I can have with Christ.
Yeah.
And I started to focus on my schooling again. I started doing sports. I started making new friends, Christian friends.
Yeah.
And I got a scholarship to go and study in Cape Town because my marks were good now.
Wow.
And in Cape Town, in the orphanage, I had already been going to draw my bloods every 6 months to check if my CD4 count was fine.
Yeah.
It was always fine, but I still had to go. And in Cape Town, I went for the first time on my own. And the result came back negative. I'm not supposed to cry on stage.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, so the results came back negative, and I told the nurses, "No, you got it wrong, please do it again." And they did a couple of times, and it was indeed negative, and it's been negative since. And yeah, I don't know what happened or how that transpired, but I just know God had a plan, and he still has a plan for my life.
Yeah.
And I know that he spared me, even through all of my suicide attempts, even through everything. He spared me because I have a story to tell and people's lives to reach by using the pain that I had to endure myself. I know that everything that I experienced did not go in vain. There's someone, even if it's just one person, one orphan or one little girl who's going to give it one more shot because they heard my story and they have a dream of their own.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. And I'm sure, as you tell the story, you're having to obviously dig deep as well. As I was reading the book, it was very clear that from a very young age, you were acquainted with rejection. You were acquainted with, and you say it yourself, you say you feel like you are an option because when foster parents come, they invite you, whether it's for Christmas or for a date or a lunch, they decide when to bring you back because, they want another orphan and you're probably not it, right? You, from a very young age, were acquainted with the aspect of loyalty, having to be this perfect person so that you can be seen and chosen. You came face to face with loss from a very young age as well. I want us to just talk about how all of that influenced relationships you found yourself in. Now that you're in university, you're a young adult, how did you find yourself and how did you see yourself in relationships?
So I think that everybody has an inner child. And some of our inner children are unhealed. Most of our inner child is actually unhealed. And that inner child shows up in your day-to-day, even as an adult. And my inner child has a strong abandonment wound. That wound obviously comes from the fact that I didn't have parents. I did feel rejected. I did feel like an option when all of those foster families would take me out and bring me back and take me out. And no matter how much I tried to be a good child and to smile and be what a perfect child looks like, they still didn't choose me. And I wanted to be adopted so badly, and it didn't happen. And for that, I developed a very, very strong abandonment wound. And it shows up in my dating life. There was a whole chapter about all of my dating.
This guy called Thabo. I was like, you, this guy.
There's a whole chapter speaking about all of my mistakes in dating, and they come from the fact that I had this huge wound of abandonment, and I just wanted anyone to fill it.
Yeah.
And Thabo was one of them, and there's a couple of others, very bad men, but I allowed them to stay because they were filling that wound. And even though God didn't send them to fill that wound, I was shoving them in there and saying, you're going to stay.
And holding on for dear life.
Thabo, I knew within the first year of dating this man that he didn't love me. But I stayed for 4 years because I so badly wanted someone. I want love, I want companionship, I want something that I didn't have. And Thabo gave me the smallest glimpse of it, and I ran with it. And I started therapy about 8 months ago, and something that we've really been tackling is that abandonment wound. And hopefully after the talk, I want to do an exercise with you guys, not for you, with you. And it was one that really helped me let go of that abandonment wound. And I know that everyone has an inner child and we have different wounds, but this exercise is going to help you to fix whatever wound you have. Because now, if I can spot a man and he's not good for me, I'm like, no, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I would have taken it because it's love.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that I felt like with the foster parents coming in when they can and then dropping us back off. To me, I was like, okay, that's love as well. Whenever they can, whatever they can give me, that's love as well. And I was doing the same thing in my dating relationships as well. Whereas now, I'm very, very picky.
Thank you so much for that. So you also have a list of people in your book that you are choosing to forgive. And this is part of your healing journey. It's like, I think, a list of 2 pages. And I really like that because, again, I believe it's something that allowed you to dig deep, right? You say, this is the person, I forgive them for that. And then you go on to the next person. Take us through the healing journey, when you decided that this is a step I want to take, and how has it been? Because as you're saying, you are having to address the inner child. There are questions you will not get answers to because you don't have that linkage to where you are from. So take us through your healing journey.
So I recently started a Bible study with a friend of mine. It's not my Bible study, so just joining a Bible study. And the focus has been forgiveness. And we've all heard the saying that you forgive for the sake of peace, correct? Right, but this one was so much deeper than I even expected. I remember I was very reluctant in the beginning to join, but then after the first 2 sessions, I'm like, Chomi, when are we doing the next one? And in that session, it speaks about, in Matthew 18, there's a parable of a master and a servant. And the servant owes the master, let's say 10,000, right? And the master asks him, where's my money? And he says, please give me more time. I really don't have it right now. I know you've already been so patient with me, but I just need a little bit more time. And he begs and he pleads. He's even on his knees begging because he doesn't have the money.
Yeah.
So the master takes pity on him and he says, okay, you know what? I cancel out your debts. You don't owe me anything.
Yeah.
The servant is beyond grateful, thanks him, kisses him, runs off, and Then that servant has a servant of his own. And let's say that servant owes him 2.5 or something. That servant comes to this servant and says, I don't have the money right now. Please give me more time. Please, please, I will have your money. You've already been so patient, etc., etc. Yet that servant does not extend the same grace to that servant now that he got from his master. Instead, he beats him up, he heckles him, and he really tortures him to get the money back. Now, there were some witnesses, and they went back to the master and said, remember that guy who owed you 10K? Well, we just saw him beating up someone who owed him way less than what you owed, what he was owed to you, and he didn't extend the same grace.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? So the master calls him in, and he says, well, I heard this. Why would you not forgive someone else when I have forgiven you?
Yeah.
And then he says, I send you off to be tormented.
Sure.
Right? Now, it's a parable, but we know that the parables in the Bibles are depictions of what happens in real life. I don't know if any of you guys here have ever experienced that anything you try, whether it's a business venture, or you try your best in school, or you try in your relationships, or you try with your health, but nothing you do is working. And you almost feel like, you know, some people will even get to a point where they're like, no man, someone has targeted me, or I need to see Sangoma or something. No, you've not been targeted, you have not forgiven. And God is allowing you to be tormented in different aspects of your life, beyond your control, beyond your power, because of the pure fact that you have not forgiven. He says it is wicked. When He has forgiven you, every day we get on our knees and we say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thine kingdom come, thine will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Then we say, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We're saying, Lord, forgive me only if I forgive that one. And you wonder why your life is not moving forward. You wonder why you're stagnant, why your health is the way that it is, regardless of how much work you put in or how much you're trying to do right. Those things will never be as they should until you forgive. And when I did this study, I was blown away, and it made sense why I had struggled so much. I'm a hustler, man. I've always been a hustler, but regardless of how much effort I put in, there was always just something. And God opened up my heart, and He showed me that, Q, you're not going to get to that place that you know you can get to and that I know you can get to unless you let go of all of this baggage that you're holding, all those people that are in your heart's prison. You need to set them free. Yeah. And another person who was in that prison was myself. I hadn't forgiven myself for all of the mistakes that I made. There's so many mistakes in that book, it's hilarious. It's almost embarrassing, but I hadn't forgiven myself. Yeah. And I have now, and it's not to say that my life is perfect, but I can feel that, no, man, God is doing something right now, and it's beyond my control.
Sure, thank you so much for that. I want us to just a little bit, you do talk about your sister in the book. There was a point where you were very angry at her because, you felt like every time you get, invited into a foster home, there was a point where she was crying hysterically and everyone's asking her, what are you crying for? She's not giving anyone an explanation. The foster family eventually got fed up. They sent you guys back, and you were really angry for her for messing up this opportunity. Yeah. You guys are much older now. What's that relationship like? And especially because you say she might have known your parents because she was much older. Did you ever ask her that question? Does she have any recollection?
Okay, so my sister and I don't have the best of relationships because of what you just spoke about now. I know it might sound so like such a minor offense, but to me it was everything. I so badly wanted a family, and whether it was being adopted by those families that we got a chance to see and she ruined it, or if she showed up as my family as well. Because she was a bit older than me, but I always had to show up as the older sister, to ask her why she's crying, or to ask her why this and this and this. And it took a huge toll on me and our relationship, where I cut her out for the longest time. And with doing this forgiveness Bible study, she was one of the people that I struggled the most to forgive. But one of the parts of the chapter for forgiveness is that you need to extend compassion to the other person. And I had to understand that she was also just a child, she knew my parents or had some recollection of our parents, whereas I didn't because I was newborn. And maybe that was what was so hard on her and why she wasn't able to show up as the older sister that I needed. It's going to take a long time to mend the relationship, but I do pray that with a little bit of work every single day, I will be able to get to the point where I have the relationship with my sister that I should have always had. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that and just being honest to say it is a journey, right? You are on that journey. Do you do any work with the orphanage today? Have you gone to visit them now that you're older?
I've gone to visit that orphanage a couple of times to just say hi and speak to the kids who are currently there and tell them that I was here as well and this is what I'm doing today. And if you just, tell yourself that you have your dream and you stick to that plan, then you can make it out as well. I haven't done as much as I would like to because I've been in other countries, but I know that with the posts that I do on social media, it's also reaching people who are not in that orphanage, other orphans, just other young girls, whoever it is that needs the inspiration.
Thank you so much. Sure. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. Q's story is very different for me. As I said, I've never met an orphan, and through this book, she has allowed us to live through her days and her years during that time in her life. Let's talk about Q today. You decided a while back that you were going to be your own boss.
Yes.
You made your first million at 25.
Yes.
You have an Airbnb business.
Indeed.
I mean, talk about that. Tell us about this Q.
So I've always been very entrepreneurial. First of all, I've always called myself a hustler, and I was a hustler since in the orphanage. I think my first job that I got was around 13, 14. I think that's illegal, right?
Underage.
I wanted money. All my friends had a smartphone, and I knew the orphanage wasn't going to buy me one, so I said, no, I'm going to work. And what I knew how to do was hair, because in the orphanage, we had to learn how to do each other's hair, and I knew how to do that, so I went to a salon, and I tried to look as old as possible, right? I went and I said I need a job, and surprisingly they gave me one.
Yeah.
And I saved up that money and I bought my first phone.
Yeah.
I was so excited. Then the next holiday I realized that I could have earned more if I worked somewhere else. So I quit that job and I went there. But I've always worked, and I've always so because I worked from a very young age, I realized very quickly that working for someone is not for me, man. And I realized that, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I started my entrepreneurial business in my first year university. That same Thabo that we were speaking about, the bad guy, he actually taught me how to sew. And I bought a sewing machine and I started making like little makeup bags and selling them. That was my first business. My second business, I then extended that one, and I did what we call a CMT company. So say, for example, you want to start your own brand. Let's say you want to make tracksuits. So we will white label. We make the tracksuits and then we sew your label into it and sell it to you so you can sell to your brand. And that was going really well. I had a little studio with all my staff, and it was doing good until it wasn't. Crashed. And it left me homeless. It left me in debt. And when you're an orphan and these sort of things happen, you're fending for yourself. There's no home to run back to. There's no mom to call. There's no one to save you. So even in that dark place that I was, I still had to show up every single day, try another business and try another one. And at some point, after fighting with God and God saying, well, you've tried, now let me show you.
Yeah.
He showed me Airbnb, and it took off in ways that I don't even know how we got there. I don't know how the million came. I wasn't planning on making it, but I've always been an entrepreneur. I let God show me after me putting in all of the work, and it didn't work out. And I did study interior design, so I was able to launch my interior design company as well. But yeah, the thing that I'm most proud of is how I was able to share the information on how to do Airbnb without owning property.
Yeah.
I shared it because before I started it, I was hungry. I didn't know what I was going to eat the next night, or I was getting involved with what we call sugar daddies, and it was out of desperation. I didn't want to be there. And I know so many young people also do things out of desperation.
Yeah.
And I know that starting the Airbnb business saved me from all of that. And so I decided I'm going to teach people, and I'm going to make the class very affordable so that anyone can join.
Yeah.
And so many people joined. I taught people in London, I taught people all over South Africa, all over the world, people joining online as well. And so many of them had come back to me and told me stories like, Q, I joined your class with my very last 100 Rand.
Sure.
And now I'm paying off my tuition.
Wow.
Because of what you taught me in that class.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So I'd like to invite the audience to questions, comments. Q's story is fascinating. It definitely is one of being able to peer on the other side so that you can make a more informed decision about what happens here. So many of us can judge your sister. We can judge the ladies at the orphanage. We can even judge you, right? But thank you so much for this book and the detail. I was definitely educated myself, definitely challenged. Questions, comments, there's one hand here. Oh, there's another one there.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story so authentically. I love authentic stories. I love hearing how people have beat the odds. I just wanted to comment on forgiveness. I've always taken myself as this peaceful person. I choose peace. I choose to live in such a way that I don't have grudges and stuff. But there's this particular person in my life who his actions, after so many years has been out of my life, I feel like his actions still affect me. Well, because we have a child together. And every time I get to a point where I feel like I'm okay, I've forgiven him, letting bygones be bygones, I'm not gonna let whatever he's doing affect me, he pulls another stand. And I'm like, how, Bo? Why are we back here? But what I've learned about forgiveness is that, like healing, it's multi-layered. And we cannot forgive things that we cannot face. We cannot forgive things that we cannot name. Throughout my journey, I keep on reminding myself that why is what he's doing making me so angry? It is because it's making me feel this way and that way and that way, and it's affecting my life in this way, and this way, and that way. And every time I have to face that, I have to peel another layer on forgiveness. You understand? I found this year's Father's Day quite triggering. I got to a point where I was like, I'm not making progress in my life. And not because I'm not working hard. I'm working hard. There's certain things I can't have because I have 3 kids. And the baby daddies are just nonsensical, for a lack of a better word. And there's this particular one who's just making my life so hard. Like 2 months ago, I discovered that I have 2 years debt of school fees because he stopped paying school fees and didn't tell me. And when the statement came to me, it was coming with demands from attorneys to say, pay up. And I'm like, how do I owe so much money? And then I'm like, dude, why did you stop paying school fees and not telling me? He's like, now you know, kind of attitude, And I got so angry. And I told God, I was like, God, I am super mad right now. Actually, I want this man to die. That's how angry I am. Because I don't understand why he keeps on doing the things he's doing. And then, when I got to that level and got to that point of anger, I had to sit down again and say, you need to learn to forgive again. For this new thing now, which is different from the abuse he put me through and whatever. Now for this level, you need to forgive. So for me, that my comment is on forgiveness, how multi-layered it is, and how we cannot forgive things that we can't name, and how we cannot forgive things that we don't want to face.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
Something that I just want to add on, you said that you're so angry at this man, you said, God, I want him to die. That is the point where you've reached the point of vengeance. You're seeking out vengeance now for whatever the person has done to you. And I speak about this whole forgiveness thing a lot on my social media, and a lot of people say back to me, Q, I hear what you're saying, but this person raped me, or this person killed someone who was really special to me, and I can feel their pain and how difficult it's going to be to forgive them. But one thing that really helped me forgive, in my book, I have to forgive the people for the whole HIV story, but it was hard for me, and the one thing that helped me really forgive is knowing that, first of all, I don't know if you guys know this, but vengeance is holy. Did you know? No? Did you? You did? But vengeance is not yours. It is God's. So, when you forgive someone, when we forgive, you say, God, I forgive that man for X, Y, Z. And maybe it was so hard for you because you still want that person to suffer, right? You can say, God, I forgive them, but do your thing. The Bible said that is holy. You can ask God, do you want me to extend grace on that person after you've forgiven? Or do you want him to seek out vengeance? But the vengeance is not yours. Leave it to God. He'll take care of it. And that to me helped me really let go. All the people that I wanted them to suffer for what they did. I know that they probably will suffer for what they did, but not on my hands, in God's hands.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There was another hand here in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to find out your relationship with your sister. When you were distant, how did it come about? Because I'm in a position that I was in a journey, 2023, that I was about to commit suicide. And I was writing a letter to my parents. And my brother walks in my room and says, "What are you doing? What are you writing?" I was like, "I'm done, brother. I'm done. I know that I'm leaving you, but my emotions, my shoes are just done because I can't do it anymore." So I wanted to find out, even now today, a week ago, I told him, he told me that our relationship is broken. I was like, "What do you mean?" And I told him that God told me that I was going to say what I was need to say to you. And he was like, "Mara, why would God allow you to break our relationship?" And he couldn't understand why. And I also questioned it today. But I was like, God only knows, you know. He led me through this journey. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to claim myself and know myself better. I'm going to an institution to know who I am as Kelebohile Bonara Ramop. So I am grateful, but I feel like I'm going to leave something that I couldn't complete. But God knew what I was going to complete with my sibling. My baby brother, no, he's all over the place, so he's busy with video games, so he doesn't dwell in that. But yeah.
Thank you, Kelebohile.
I think before I got on stage, I asked our host if I can do an exercise with everyone. And I want to do it with all of you, né? Because there's certain things that we do, or there's certain ways that we cry out for help because the inner child is not healed. And I believe that that's what's happening here. So if you guys don't mind, everyone, please, né? I'm going to do the same exercise. I was introduced to this exercise in therapy, which is very important, guys. As much as we do pray and we do come to church and we do have fellowship with people, there's still professional help that we need to get at certain times. The same way that you would go to a doctor to heal your wound, your physical wound, is the same way you need to go to the therapist to heal your mental wound as well. And God has blessed those people with those gifts to be able to help you. So let's not reject therapy like I did for many years. But the exercise that I did was to heal the inner child so that things like this are not happening where you feel like it's so bad, I want to end my life. That is the inner child telling you, because she feels like it is that bad. Whereas you as an adult, grown, 23, you know that it's not that bad. But she's crying out for help, so we need to heal her. Now, like I said earlier, I have an abandonment wound which came from the fact that I didn't have parents. But the day that the wound was actually formed was the day I was forgotten at school, because I felt insignificant. I felt like I didn't matter, and that's why they forgot me, because I didn't matter. So now it shows up as me taking on relationships with people that I know are not good for me. It shows up as me overthinking. When someone rejects me, I think it's the end of the world, and maybe I do want to end my life like I did when Thabo rejected me. So the therapist said, you need to go back. Okay, close your eyes, everyone. Close your eyes. The first thing you need to do is identify what is it that your wound is. For me, it's abandonment. Okay? Tell yourself, what is yours? All right, just nod your head if you've identified it. Okay, the second thing you're going to do is think back and try your best to think back to when this wound was actually formed. Where does it come from? There was a specific day where it started for the first time. And for me, it was the day when they left me at school. And you're going to try and remember every little detail about that day. So for me, I'm going to remember that I was wearing my swimming costume and I had my tracksuit on top because I had been swimming. And the tracksuit was not, or the swimming costume was not dry because I thought I was going to get picked up in just 10 minutes or so. It was cold. The sun was setting, there were other kids around, and slowly, I could see their parents come and pick them up, and I was still waiting. So try and recall as many details as you can about that day. Right, now, answer this question to yourself. How were you feeling in that moment? When, in my case, when I was forgotten, I was feeling scared because it was getting dark. I didn't know when they were going to realize I was not at home yet. I didn't know how long it was going to take them to come and pick me up. I was scared. I was also scared because I'm standing on the outside of the school gate and there are strangers walking past, and any of them can take me and kidnap me, and I don't know when I would be found. I'm scared. I'm angry as well. How dare they forget me? I'm crying. So try and remember how it made you feel. Okay, so now as you're standing there, you can see your younger self standing there in tears for whatever has happened to you. I need you to now picture yourself now, your older version. So I'm going to picture Big Q walking up to baby Q, tapping her on the shoulder. Hi, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And baby Q turns around and she tells me, I'm crying because they forgot me. I'm crying because I feel like I don't matter that much for anyone to remember. All the other children were picked up by their parents, and I'm still standing here, and I don't know how long it's going to take them before they realize I'm not there. What does your younger self tell your older self? Why are they crying? Right. So, after that, your older self now responds. Now, you can respond in any way that you feel you needed someone to respond at that time. So, when I was a young girl and it was happening to me, I needed someone to tell me, Q, you do matter. You're not forgettable. You're not irrelevant or not important. You're important to me. And I validate her feelings, and I wipe her tears, and I put her into my car, and I drive her off to the orphanage, and I tell them that I'm going to take care of this child from now on because you forgot her, you made her feel this way and that way and that way. And I sign the adoption papers, and we drive off into the sunset and live the life that small Q wanted to live. And I need you to do the same thing. You need to show up for your smaller child, your inner child, and save them from whatever was happening, whatever it is that caused that wound. You need to now show up and save them, take them by the hand, and walk off into the sunset to live the life that you wanted, or the inner child wanted to live. Okay, you can open your eyes now. That was the exercise that I did with my therapist, and it was the first time I cried in therapy, to be honest, and I'd been going for months. But when I did that, I was so, like, my inner child needed it. I don't know if you guys experienced that now as well. You did? My inner child needed someone to show up, and it was great this time because the person who showed up was me. And so now when men come and they do funny things, or if I face any type of rejection or I feel abandoned, I do the exercise again, and each time Q shows up for Q. And that's what you need to do for yourself. Keep doing the exercise over and over again. And you probably have a lot of wounds to heal. So try and identify the wound, try and find where the wound comes from, and show up for yourself to heal that wound.
As soon as you said, open your eyes, I felt just a feeling of lightness. Thank you so much
Thank you
for
for having
sharing
me.
your story. It needs to be shared even wider. It needs to be heard. Thank you so much for not waiting for big publications, but really just taking it as if you are journaling and being able to get the message out there. I know that there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from this, and thank you for being transparent, even on your social media. During the healing journey, you are not waiting to be healed until you start sharing, but you are inviting people to become part of it. Thank you so much for being brave and being courageous. Thank you for not giving up. And I'm grateful to God for you that He showed up when He did. And you are also, as part of that healing journey, you are building that relationship with Him as well.
I am.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.